Hello, everyone. This course, we will introduce something about the L2TP VPN because we already know some basic about the GRE VPN, right? And about this VPN, usually is used for our access user, for example, some mobile user. And if we go outside for business, if you still want to get some headquarter resources, one solution is you can dial up pass through the public switch, the telephone network, or maybe integrated service digital network, or maybe you can directly dial up to your headquarters directly, but the fee is very expensive. So we can use the tool L2TP VPN. There are two tunneling protocol, and we can pass through some public network by this VPN. It can reduce the cost and also can meet our requirement to get the headquarter resources. And about this principle, we will have two parts. The first one is a basic principle of L2TP, and the second one is a key configuration. For the first part, the L2TP VPN is a virtual tunneling protocol, and it can utilize the dial-up function of the public network. And in the public network, we can deploy the L2TP, like this scenario, right? We can directly establish the L2TP tunnel in the VPN service and the headquarters. Then maybe your terminal or maybe your branches can directly use this tunnel to visit the headquarters. But the limitation is L2TP only can encapsulate our PPP message. Also, if you have the PPPoE, it can work. But the normal Ethernet message cannot be used for the L2TP. So this is a limitation. And the next layer, the encapsulation for the PPP message, we will use the UDP to help us for the message out. And the UDP port number is 1701. So this is a special encapsulation. And let's say the application scenario for the L2TP VPN. We can support two typical tunnels. One is NAS initiated, and another one is client initiated. And the different one is the NAS initiated L2TP VPN is we can directly deploy the L2TP VPN tunnel between two network devices, like two routers, right? And then lots of terminal or maybe branches can also, lots of terminals can use the same L2TP tunnel to visit with each other. So the employee can send out some private message, pass through the PPPoE network or maybe ISDN network, and then enter our NAS devices, and then use our tunnel pass through the public network, and the headquarter router receive it. We can do the de-encapsulation and then forward the private message to the headquarter. And in the tunnel, we will have two rules. One we call is L2TP access client, and another one is L2TP network service. So between them, we must establish the L2TP tunnel. So this is the first scenario. The second one, you also can directly deploy the L2TP tunnel between the terminal and the headquarters immediately, directly. In this one we call is client initiated L2TP VPN. And between them, we can send out some message. So in these two different scenarios, and usually we will use the first scenario, maybe directly to get a LAC service from the vendor, and we can deploy the message, or maybe you can deploy the LAC in your local network. And lots of terminals don't know I already use L2TP. They only send out some private information. It's enough. And let's say the encapsulation. If you want to use L2TP VPN, for the branches terminals, we only send out some private information, right? And pass through the PPPoE, we have to add the PPP function because L2TP only can help us to forward the PPP message. So we will add a header for the PPP. This encapsulation is different with your Ethernet, okay? And then we will make them to become the physical layer to become 1010 and send them the message out. And then this message will send to our LAC device. We will do the L2TP encapsulation and include the PPP. We will add a new L2TP header, and this header will help us to force a message to the LNS device. Maybe in your network, you have the other device, right? You have to, according to this information, send to the correct LNS and add the UDP message and add the new public header and add to become a new physical layer. And between them, between the internet, all the devices only for the message information according to the public header. We will not continue to recognize what's your private part. No, that's because the destination IP address is this router IP address, okay? And then the message forwarded out to the headquarters. And when the headquarters receive it, we will do the de-encapsulation. So delete the public header, delete the UDP, delete the L2TP, and finally forward to the headquarters. We only have the private information. So this is a whole process. So for the branches and also the headquarters terminals, they don't know we already use L2TP to forward the message out. And in the public network, we also don't know the private information because we forward the message according to the public part. So this is encapsulation. And about the L2TP, this is the encapsulated protocol in the VPN, right? And we have lots of information. And here we have explanation for every bit. The T value for information, the L value is the whole length for the message, and the X value is reserved. And some S value, this is the sequence number flag, okay? And the key point for the all version is tunnel ID and session ID. This one is very important. For the tunnel ID, it indicates the tunnel belong to the control information. If we want to use the L2TP VPN, we must to negotiate some parameters. And each negotiation successful, we will have one tunnel ID to establish with each other. And another one for the session ID. Session ID, it indicates the user session in the tunnels. And pay attention. What means the session ID? Because like this topology, between the LAC and LNS, maybe you only establish one L2TP tunnel. And one tunnel, we will have one tunnel ID. But if we establish the tunnel successfully, maybe lots of terminals will use the same tunnel to communicate with each other. So each terminal, we will have one session. So maybe in one tunnel, we have multiple sessions. And in the same tunnel, we will use different session ID to distinguish with each other, okay? If one session is ready, maybe we have to close the session. If all sessions are ready, we have to close the L2TP tunnel, okay? So this is a relationship. And these two IDs only effectively on the local devices. Okay, so this is the encapsulation. Of course, about these IDs will created automatically. And the next part for the L2TP VPN configuration. If you want to deploy the L2TP, here we only explain the NAS initiated because in another scenario, you have to get a special L2TP client. And in this process, you have to configure the basic network information. It also is same. Before you deploy any VPNs, you must keep your public network connection is ready. So you have to configure it. And then you have to enable the PPP dial-up function on the client interface. And this interface will connect with our LAC device. So this is the second part. The third part, you have to enable the VPN on the LAC and also configure the L2TP tunnel parameters. Okay, so this is the L2TP on the LAC. Because about the LAC, the left side, you have to connect with our terminals. The right side, you have to connect with our LNS. So the second part, configuration for your terminal. The third part, your configuration to do the communication with your LNS, your server. And the next part for the LNS, you have to create the address pool, the user information, and also some virtual VPN interfaces to connect the connection with LAC. Because all your terminals want to visit your headquarters, you have to check your identification is good or not. You have to provide, for example, your username and password, right? If your username and password are correct, maybe I will assign a new IP address for you. Then you can use this IP address to visit our headquarters resources. So this is a configuration for the LNS. And finally, you can check your tunnel status and the user dial-up information. It can work or not. So this is a whole process. And the key part we have to do on LNS is, first you have to enable the L2TP, right? VPN enable. And then you have to create the virtual VPN interface. You have to use a virtual logical interface, not about the physical. And create the VPN group 1, because maybe you also provide multiple tunnels for different LAC. And accept dial A, and the source IP address is 12.1.1.2. This is the address for the LAC, okay? It is generally the egress address of the dedicated line. So this IP address must be configured manually. And we use the protocol is L2TP. And the virtual VPN 1, this protocol must be set to the L2TP for the command configuration. Otherwise, the command will not appear. So this is a basic one. And then you can provide the tunnel authentication. The password is Ruijie. That means maybe the L2TP client, LAC, want to send out some L2TP message to do negotiation. We have to check your identification. If we have the same password, then we can establish the tunnel, something like this. And then you have to create the address pool, VPN pool. The name is test. The address from 101.1 to 101.100. This address for your L2TP users. And your username is test, password also is test. So if your client to connect with our network, you must give the correct username and password. And then you have to create the virtual VPN interface, right? Because we already use the virtual VPN interface in the LNS configuration here, right? So what's the information of this virtual interface? You have to use a PPP And in the PPP, we have one authentication process, and we have multiple choice, like the CHAP or maybe PAP. So here we choose the CHAP. Okay, and the IP address for the virtual interface is 10.1.1.1. Okay, so this is the IP address for your virtual VPDM. And if we receive this IP address, if we establish the tunnel and get the message from user, which IP address we can assign for your client, you can directly choose a VPN address pool. The name is test. So this one from here, right? And this one from here. So this is a relationship, LNS. And then you can check the result, show VPDN, and also maybe you can check your interface is up or not, and also you can check some routing information. And of course, on your LAC, you also have to add some configuration to show your LAC who is your server, something like this. And here is one question for the L2TP. What is the port number used by the L2TP protocol? First, we choose the UDP as the transport mode, transport layer protocol, and the port number is 17.1. So the option B is correct. So the summary for the L2TP is L2TP VPN can access public network by using the dial up function, right? And pay attention, it also cannot provide the encryption and reliability verification function. So you can use the VPN to pass through the public network and then to force a private message. But if someone gets your packets, I will know everything. So this also is a disadvantage for the L2TP VPN. And another is the L2TP VPN only can encapsulate the PPP message and into the UDP packets. And the UDP port number is 17.1. So this also is a limitation. And we can support two typical tunnels mode. One is we can deploy the VPN, L2TP VPN into network devices. This one we call is NAS initiated. And another one is your terminal also can deploy one L2TP client, directly establishes a VPN tunnel with our L2TP server. So this mode we call is client initiated. And about the configuration, we only show you how to give the correct configuration on the NAS initiative. That's all. Thank you.